Lights blinked dimly in the personal teleportation bay as Ferg fiddled with the settings. Not that it mattered. Since the invention of the mobile teleporter, the static, shipbound teleporter had been all but abandoned. Still, naval protocol demanded that it be staffed at all times. Since he was the only officer assigned, it meant that Ferg had been sleeping, eating, and, well, doing everything else in the small room. In recent years, it had become a bit of an exemplary duty, as in, look at what this idiot did to get teleporter duty. Take this as an example of what might happen to you if you screw up enough. A fact that was all too clear to Ferg at the start of this 12-straight shift of teleporter duty. The unfairness of it all was enough to raise his hackles, and he took a moment to breathe, let his quills return normal. It wasn't his fault that the Marines attached to the ship had challenged naval security to a contest of strength and war readiness. They had issued small light beam weapons and attached sensors that would detect a hit. That had been encouraged by the entire command structure. And it definitely wasn't his fault that the Marines had cheated, placing reflective metal over their sensors, effectively preventing them from being hit. Ferg had to admit, grudgingly, that it had been his idea to make a very special batch of food that had been anonymously left in the Marine mess hall. A batch had a contribution from every member of the security team. Unfortunately, someone had blabbed. After the Marines had eaten almost every scrap of food, they were unhappy. The resulting brawl ultimately engulfed 3 full decks, and only ended when it was realized that the Admiral had been taped to the ceiling blindfolded. Neither side was claiming credit. But someone needed to take the fall, and that, it was clear, was Ferg's honour. Feet up on the console in front of him, and lost in his musings on the injustice inherent in military life, Ferg missed these subtle changes in the instruments before him. Lights began to blink more quickly, and humming began to increase in pitch and volume. Ferg remained oblivious until a computerized voice sent him toppling backwards from his chair. "Inbound teleportation detected. Prepare to receive transmission." Ferg stared at the console, mind struggling to understand. First, they were in deep space, so no teleportation now was allowed, and only those with proper credentials could return to the ship, so it was impossible for anyone to be coming in. Second, everyone knew that ships could not be the designated destination. You returned to ships through quantum anchoring. You didn't teleport to ships. One of the reasons mobile teleporters have become more popular. Third, Ferg had changed the settings on the teleporter way too much for someone to be able to lock into their signal. Yet despite Ferg's clearly articulated arguments, the teleporter continued to spin to life. Ferg swallowed heavily and dove towards the corner of the room that held his cot. It wasn't much shelter, but he had seen the pictures of miscalculated transports, and he really didn't want to see whatever was coming through turned inside out. Before it exploded, obviously. The sounds increased to an almost unsustainable level. Ferg slapped his hands over his ears, squeezing his eyes shut. Then it stopped. No noise, no lights, nothing. Ferg opened his eyes, slowly taking his hands from his ears. He peeked out from behind his cot, and was almost blinded by a flash of light brighter than anything he had seen before. Ferg screamed, holding eyes that burned and watered. Everything was still white and blurry when he heard the sound of heavy footsteps. Footsteps that were close to him. Very close. As in the same room close. Ferg rubbed at his eyes until his vision began to come back. Slowly, images began to take shape. 2 beings, taller than any he had ever seen, stood before him, their heads almost scraping the ceiling. That was the first thing he noticed. The second was that they were clearly not Andovian. Their proportions were all wrong. Their heads too big, their limbs too long, and covered in some type of suit the like of which he had never seen before. Suddenly, one of the beings collapsed to the ground, pulling at his huge, featureless head. There was a sudden hiss, and suddenly Ferg was aware that its head was in fact a helmet. A shockingly bright tuft of hair sat on top of its new head, with very dark, soft-looking skin covering the area, not hidden by hair. Ferg's observations were cut off by a hideous cry from the being on its knees, and suddenly the creature began to expel the contents of his stomach. Ferg froze, unsure if this was a threat display or perhaps a claiming of territory. At the sound of the first being expelling, the second being sprang into motion. It pawed unsuccessfully at his own helmet/head. Unsuccessfully because moments later, Ferg heard a similar cry from the second being, only the helmet did not come off. Once the sounds had ceased, the first being rose and turned to the second, helping it remove his helmet. Ferg was touched by the kind gesture, until the second being returned the kindness by striking the first being in arm with one of its limbs, hard. Ferg could hear the solid thump of bone on muscle clear even from his hiding spot. "You bastard! You know I have a sensitive gag reflex?" The second being hissed at the first, his deep voice rolling over Ferg. "Gee, sorry, Murphy. Next time we travel through space and time, I'll do my best to keep my lunch down. Damn, it's not like I did it on purpose," the first being groused, rubbing his arm. The two beings looked around and appeared to notice for the first time just where they were. Murph? Is it just me, or does this not look like our lab? Or our ship, or any ship in our navy?" the first being asked, uncertainly. "Yeah, this is new," the second being, Murphy, answered. Ferg shifted, almost unconsciously, trying to get a better look at the intruders. Their hearing must have been incredible, because almost as one, they turned, fixed their eyes on Ferg's hiding spot. After a moment's pause, one of the beings, the one not named Murphy, called out tentatively, hello?" Figuring there was no point in putting off the inevitable, Ferg stilled himself and slowly stood up from behind his upturned cot. There was a moment that seemed to stretch, as Ferg and his visitors seemed to take each other in. The Andovian Republic had long since given up on finding intelligent life. First Contact Protocol was only used as an example of a good way to waste resources. Trying to recall something, anything, that would help end what was an increasingly awkward moment, Ferg opened his mouth. Welcome? My name is Ferg. I'm a security officer on this ship, the ARM Protector. What is that? Ferg asked, gesturing to the softly smoking pile of stuff that had come out to the first being. The two beings stared. Finally, the first one spoke. Hello. My name is Scientific Officer Peter Taggart. This is Petty Officer Chad Murphy. We come in peace, I guess? Oh, and I wouldn't touch that. It's vomit. And probably contains enough bacteria and acid to kill you. Ferg nodded along before freezing. Wait, did you say man? Murphy interrupted, still staring at Ferg. You guys look like a giant hedgehog mixed with a puppy. You're adorable, he finished, showing his teeth. The display and the obvious interest made my calls rise. My discomfort must have been clear to them, as they backed up a step and raised their hands in a placating manner. What are you? Ferg finally managed to ask, his fear slowing his thinking. And why are you here? How are you here? Taggart sent a glare at Murphy that clearly said, "Shut the hell up until I tell you otherwise." He breathed deeply, the exhale of warm air coming out strongly enough to ruffle Ferg's quills. Well, we refer to ourselves, our species, as humans. Our origins lie in the Milky Way galaxy, though we are slowly expanding beyond it. We're here, mostly by accident. We recently discovered faster-than-light travel through the use of, well, maybe we can talk about it later. Anyway, it seemed that the engine we were using could handle more energy than we were giving it, so I thought, why not double the energy input and see what happens? And yeah, suddenly a portal, I guess, opened up, sucked us in, and here we are, Taggart finished, displaying his teeth again. Ferg's head hurt from the impossibility of it all. No, that should not have been possible. Also, why in the world would you feed that much energy to an FTL engine? What if it, exploded or something? That's why we're wearing the spacesuits, Murphy responded helpfully. Taggart glanced at Murphy, who probably stopped talking. Okay. Ferg rubbed his head, feeling the beginning of a deep headache coming on. That still does not explain how you decided to screw with a very dangerous engine and somehow ended up in a teleporter bait on a secure military ship somewhere in the galaxy, because I have no idea what this Milky Way galaxy is. We don't know, Taggart responded, clearly excited. How could we? But this is incredible. We had no idea there was other life. Of course, we have no idea how we're going to get back, but we can figure that out later. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that, Ferg responded. Quantum anchoring usually helps with finding return coordinates. Quantum anchoring? What's that? Murphy asked with interest. Well, the universe seems to, hate teleportation. It remembers where you were, and there's a pull, I suppose you could say, that we've been able to analyze to help people return to where they teleported from. Don't ask me any more about it, because I have no idea. I just know it works. Ferg held up his hands to defend the questions that both humans had opened their mouths to ask. They paused momentarily before both launching into questions, talking over and interrupting each other. Ferg, however, wasn't listening. Behind the two humans, a small circle had appeared, floating in the air. Even as the two humans argued, the circle grew. Though if Ferg could see what it was obviously a scientific lab, very similar to the one on his own ship, though scaled up by about 30%. Ferg managed, pointing at the hole. The two humans didn't notice, continuing to argue with each other. In fact, they didn't notice until they began to be pulled backward, towards the opening through space and time. Once they did notice, though, they reacted quickly. Taggart dove away from the hole, grabbing onto the teleportation console. Murphy scrambled for something to hold onto on the floor, but finding nothing, slipped backwards into the hole, yelling the whole time. The force seemed to increase because Taggart's feet came off the floor, so that he seemed to be flying. Ferg, however, seemed to be immune, as he could feel no pull towards the hole. Eventually the force became too great, and Taggart's grip slipped, sending him tumbling towards the portal. As he went, Taggart went screaming, "No! I have so many questions!" The screaming stopped, as Taggart fell through the portal, was snapped shut as soon as he had entered it. And then he was alone in a room that was scrapped, destroyed, and covered in the human's vomit. There was concernedly still smoking. Or was he alone? Ferg suddenly became aware of something. Something in the room with them. He couldn't see anything, but he knew there was something there. Then a voice that he felt more than heard seemed to speak, carrying with it the wariness of an ancient being, or maybe a parent to young children. "Fucking humans, man." And then it was gone, leaving Flo to figure out how to explain this to his superiors without ending up in a special room with padded walls. Ferg sighed and agreed with the being, whose very existence spurred a whole host of existential questions that Ferg was actively ignoring. "Fucking humans, man."